Been working on some tactical engagements, missions, creating missions for the 440th VFW flights. We do Friday night pickup and some other random pickups here and there, but I like to have some variety in the flights. One of the things I want to start building up into our flights is weather, but I want to have some more realistic type of weather. Just don't want to go with a blanket kind of weather. In the theater, Tyrant has a tool that's the virtual mission tools that have the weather, and Tyrant's on the recording for this right now. I
Hello.
contacted him. Hello, Tyrant.
Hello.
And want to go over with him, and he's pretty much going to walk me through and show me how to not only use the VMT tool, what it is, but also about the weather. So just to kind of intro into this, you want to give me a quick overview on, and everybody listen, what overview on what the VMT, the virtual mission tools is?
Sure. There's a lot I could say, but I'll keep it as brief as I can. Brevity not being one of my strong points, but nonetheless, I'll try. So this started out as, it actually started out as a weather tool. It's grown past that. The reason it's called Virtual Mission Tools is that it does more than weather these days, although I know you want to talk about weather, and we definitely will. But it does a bunch of things. Basically, it's addressing what I see as some of the shortcomings of the understandably dated like BMS UI, right? I mean, it's a 20-year-old sim, and it's amazing. It's utterly amazing, no question about it. Huge props to the dev team. But 1990, whatever it was, 98, things were different UI wise, and I feel like we've learned a bit about visualization, especially like understanding how to interpret data, which really is the job when you're looking at the 2D screen. So VMT is really about like augmenting what you get in the 2D screen. I got really tired of, because I was running a weekly campaign, which you flew a lot in, Dirk.
Right.
And I'd be like, okay, well, where are the enemy? How many aircraft? How many like MiG-29s are at this air base? And all these questions that I would ask, and it would be click, click, click,
Sure.
click, 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 click.
Recon for mission planning kind of
exactly.
thing.
And it's not terrible. Certainly, it's totally doable. The BMS has a very like workable UI, but I was doing it. I think I was running 3 campaigns a week at one point, and I really wanted a way to just be more fluid with that stuff. And so I wrote VMT it evolved from a weather thing that I wrote. I wrote it to be a way to visualize the theater. But like I said, it also has weather in it. So that's sort of the background. I know you're interested more in the weather stuff, so maybe we can kind of focus on that. I do have some video tutorials up. Actually, I think we're looking at your screen now, and you can see at the top there it says help, bug, feature request, click here. There's a little link there, and that'll take you to you'll get yourself to the VMT page on the 440th website, and there's a link to some tutorial videos there that people might find helpful. I've tried to make it as easy to use it as I can, but it's a pretty complex task. And so, of course, there's some complexity in the user interface. On top of that, the tool's not perfect by any stretch. So hopefully this stuff will help. But I would definitely recommend that people reach out and ask me questions if they have any. That link will also take you to a place where you can do that. And of course, if you're Dirk, you can always just call me up and do it that way. But I'm happy to help people via the forums and do it that way too.
Yeah, that's one thing that you're really like hands-on with the community. So I know you're always trying to improve this and looking for good ideas and all. And I've seen a lot of changes on it. My most familiarity with it is we'll put it in our forums post for a mission flight coming up in a week in advance, and it'll have some really nice screenshots with all the flights shown together on it. That's one thing that maybe the 2D doesn't show as well, which is where where's our bomber coming from, where's our tanker, that kind of thing. So we can see it all together on one little screenshot, as well as threat markings or routes or tanker routes. So all of that stuff's pretty handy to see all in one picture. You could pretty much bring it up on a tablet or something like that and have it beside you as a really good reference during flight. But we also use it for briefing, which is one of the tools on it. So, we'll hopefully could touch on that a little bit. But one of the part of I'm wanting to see is more of the weather thing. But I guess just to get started here, just load a mission first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there's the obvious button there. Go ahead.
So you can load a briefing so that you can, once you're in the tool, and you can save it as a VMTB file, and you can load that back in and work with it. But I'm going to go in and actually load a mission in. So there's I can load in either campaign missions or tactical engagements. Now I've got just a basic, like I just set up a single ship strike tactical engagement. Didn't even set up any kind of weather or anything on it, so I'm going to go ahead and load that. Alrighty, so I got the full tool open now where there's a map on one side, and then on the right side there's a bunch of information with a bunch of different tabs there. Anything you want to go over, a real quick overview?
I
I know what some of the things you have in your other videos. We can just hit the parts here if you want.
Yeah, I think in the interest of time, given that I based on having explained this tool to people a number of times, we could easily spend 2, 3, 4 hours going through this, just because there's a lot to understand, both about the richness of BMS, but also about this particular tool. Maybe we should just jump straight to the weather and talk about that.
Okay, alrighty. Well, the one thing I'll do real quick, so we do have the map here. Sometimes I'll take the actual weather or well, not the opacity of the weather. I'll turn it back just a little bit. I'm okay, so I can see the map coming through. One thing I'll do is I'll turn on the strike flight that I set up, and it is right here. I'm going to check the box so it'll actually show the route. So now we actually see a route. The plane's taking off out of Kunsansbaum and some kind of a target up here north of Seoul and Kimpo area. So let's say, for instance, I want to do global weather over the whole thing, and I want to have not really bad. Let's say I don't want to have to do an ILS, but I want to have bad weather. So I want to climb through the clouds and then get over top of them at, let's say, I'm out over the top at 22, 23,000. So maybe clouds between 5,000 and 20,000, but not a lot of wind. I don't want to bounce all over the place too bad. So how would I start?
Well, I think the thing to understand is, first of all, what you're looking at. One of the things that's a little bit, I think, unfamiliar to people that first come to this, if they're not familiar with the BMS weather model, is, when you look at this, you're probably looking at it and going, oh, well, that's the green is sort of light rainfall, and the yellow is medium rainfall, and the red is heavy rainfall. But that's actually not what's happening. You need to understand the BMS weather model. It's all about, well, it's not all about, but one of the most important things is the weather type. And there are 4 weather types. There's what we call sunny, fair, poor, and inclement. So on this map, what we're seeing in those colors is exactly that. The sort of clear areas are the sunny areas. And actually, if you flip to the weather tab real quick for us on there, you can see, if you scroll down a bit somewhere.
I see weather type here.
Yeah, but if you scroll down a little bit on this right-hand side here, you'll see there's a color right there.
We go. Yep.
Right. So
and that corresponds with what we see in the UI when we're creating missions.
Correct. Yeah, that's right. And exactly, it's the same stuff. And one of the things that you need to realize is that the weather type is about precipitation and cloud. So, like, if you look at that section there where your mouse is right now, clouds and contrails, you can see that you have in that table towards the bottom of that section, you've got, it says sunny visibility 30, fair visibility 20, and then it talks about stratus base and cumulus base. One of the important things about VMT is that anything that has a blue underline, you can click on and get a little explanation. So if you click on that guy, it'll say what it is. So that, I think, is super helpful as you're exploring. Definitely. Exploring the UI. So first of all, you were asking about clouds, right? Well, so first thing we need to realize is that there's a difference between stratus and cumulus, or what at least BMS calls stratus and cumulus. And you could click on those, those terms in the table there: stratus base and stratus top, cumulus base, and all that good stuff.
Okay.
And it'll say what it means. And really, without making people read that, the stratus base is that sort of thin layer that you usually see way up, typically at 20K or above. And cumulus are the poofy ones that are so fun to fly through.
Right.
And so this table here is where you would set those based on the weather type. And so you can see right now, where you're coming out of Kunsan there, you're kind of at the edge between a poor weather area and a fair weather area. And so at that boundary, BMS does some blending. So like right at that boundary, you would expect conditions to be visibility between 10 and 20 miles, and cumulus clouds somewhere between 7.5 and 8,000, right?
Okay.
So that's kind of how you interpret all that. So that explains what we're looking at, but it doesn't explain how you control it. And there, with a tool that tries to give you control over all the things that BMS can do, there are obviously a lot of options because the BMS weather model is really rich. But one of the easy things you can do is you can click that randomize button there in the clouds and contrails section.
Okay.
And what that'll do is it'll just pick a brand new weather pattern. I'm sorry, that randomizes the cloud setup. So you can see, if you click it again, maybe people will notice that the settings have changed. So we want random clouds.
Here.
I think this is super interesting personally because
Oh, yeah.
this leads to all sorts of configurations that you might not think to do yourself. For instance, sometimes you'll get really low cloud coverage. Like you'll get, okay, well, Kunsan is here. This one's really interesting. You got poor weather, but the stratus is up at 28,000 in that last one. The cumulus is at 13,000. No, it's okay. Don't worry about it. The point is that these things is that by changing it up. So, Dirk, I think you've had this experience in like some of the campaigns that I've run or that Zeus has run, where you take off and you're like, I've never seen weather like this before because it's always been, oh, well, the visibility is 30 miles and you call, tower and QNH is, 3006, winds 180 at 04 knots, right? Like the totally standard weather. And that's one of the things I think that randomize button does is it pushes you into different regimes of the weather model that you might not otherwise experience. But of course, you can set all those things yourself.
Alrighty. One question I already when I was clicking the randomize, it did change all these numbers down here, so it made it either more severe or worse severe. But I noticed it did not change any of the picture on the map. Is that because of the time setting, or is that just because so for instance, the yellow pour area around Kunsan, it's just making it either a better pour or a worse pour?
So really good question. And the answer is that when you click that randomize button, what are you really randomizing is the cloud and contrail settings for the weather types, but you haven't changed the weather pattern itself. So if you scroll up a bit in this right-hand side here, you'll see the bit sort of more towards the top here. And in fact, the weather parameters is the one that's at the bottom of your screen right now. That's kind of the main thing. So VMT is designed to do random weather, meaning sort of an infinite variety of different weather and patterns. It always comes up with this weather, which is to say, poor weather near Kunsan and a sort of, cell of inclement weather out to the northwest. And that's because of that seed parameter there that you see under weather parameters 1, 2, 3, 4. But you can pick any number you want. Go ahead and click random. It'll pick a random one for you. And you got to give it a second to compute because there's actually a lot of math going on here.
It actually changed the whole model.
It changed the whole model. And so you can click that a bunch of times until you see something you like.
Okay.
The thing to realize about this.
So like here, really clear around Kunsan, but then we can have a strike in the bed. Okay.
Correct. Although the thing to realize about this is that what you're looking at when you click that random button, you're picking weather pattern 3018 in this case, but that's actually a weather pattern across all time. So you're looking at pattern 3018, but you happen to be looking at it at 9 o'clock on day one, and you can see that up in the time controls up above at the top there. Yeah.
Okay.
And so, if you happen to take off at 9 o'clock, this is the weather you'll see. But if you click on that step forward button,
do you want to step 60 minutes?
That's fine.
Intervals?
It doesn't really matter for purpose of our discussion as well. That's the animate button, so that'll sort of animate it. What you can see here is what the weather will look like.
So that bad weather's moving down through.
It's moving down to the southeast, right?
That was over the period of about 3 or 4 hours.
Right.
Okay. So I could do back-to-back TEs with a pattern that'll move. And
Absolutely.
We'll know what the pattern is moving. Okay.
It move and evolve. I don't know if you saw that as you're animating it. The weather pattern is shifting slightly too.
So could I fast forward this to a certain spot and stop it so bad weather's right over top of Kunsan?
Absolutely. Okay. So you notice that next to the time there are two buttons. One is jump to and one is set to. Okay. So jump to means, well, this weather pattern is evolving, right? It's a world. You could think of the seed as, identifying some world. Right now we're in world 3018. Take me to world 3018 and show me what it looks like at 1500 hours on day one. Okay. But you could also say, well, I like this weather pattern. I want this weather pattern to be the weather pattern at 1500. So you could say, I like this weather pattern a lot. It's got, sort of poor weather at Kunsan. You could type a time in there where it says 01 1500 and say 01 900 and say set to, and that would say, well, no, interpret the current weather, the thing I'm looking at right now, as being the weather at 9 o'clock, and basically do an adjustment. If
Okay,
that
so
makes any
my
sense.
9 o'clock mission that did have the bad weather cell up northwest, and I've moved it down here. I can now change this to 0900. Now my bad weather is right over Kunsan.
That's right, and that's
Okay.
one of the many ways that you can control weather in VMT.
And how do I change that?
Just type in a pattern. So like it's red because right now what you don't have is not a valid time, but now it's white because it changed to valid, and you click the set to button to say I want it to be that. And now what you've done is you've said
the weather time. Yep.
This is the 9 o'clock weather. And actually
weather time. Good.
Yeah, exactly. So that's certainly one way to do it. And that's a simple way to do it because it'll you'll still have weather that kind of evolves over time in a. So I don't like to use the word realistic for VMT's weather model because it's not actually intended to be, sort of how weather works in the real world.
Right.
It's meant to be two things: interesting and convincing.
Right. Yep.
Right. Like in other words,
it fits our sim model.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Like we don't as virtual pilots spend a lot of time filling out paperwork. Right. We do enough to make it interesting, but we're interested in a world that is immersive for the important things, and leaves things like the administrative aspects of being a fighter pilot to that kind of elide those. And so the notion here is let's make weather that is variable in a fun way.
Right. Absolutely.
It makes sense?
Yep.
Okay.
Before we move away from this,
sure.
So this is one thing that we can do is these random movements and unlocking it. How do I get this weather now from here into my TE?
So if you scroll up to the very top here, you can see it's going to save weather files. Sorry, not the very top. The one where it says save mission weather files. There's a button labeled save weather files kind of in the next section down from where you are right now. If you go down to that one.
Here,
that
save
one
weather
right.
Files.
Yes. Okay. So that's kind of an all-in-one. And
save mission weather to weather files right there. Okay.
Correct. And if you look at the important thing is you got to look at your from and your to, right? So it's going to say it's going to save weather from 0900 to 1500 hours in 15-minute intervals.
Okay.
So when you click that button, it's going to save weather in that interval.
And I go to save it now. We can write over it later, right?
Go ahead. Yep.
Okay. I hit save.
And so it does take a little while. So you'll see a little progress bar.
Okay. And now what it's creating these different F maps, which have a day and a time stamp on them. Okay.
Yep. And so what BMS does is it looks into the weather map updates folder. And it says, okay, well, what should the weather be at 0900 when we jump into the jet? And it loads that FMAP file, which contains the weather that you're looking at here. And it says, okay, that's it. And then at 0915, it'll say, oh, the weather has changed now. And it will, morph the weather in the sim to whatever is in the 0915 file. So this is one of the big things that VMT does is it allows you to have weather that sort of smoothly changes in 15-minute increments from what it was at 9 o'clock to what it was at 9:15. Right. If that makes sense.
Yep. Yeah, it sure does. Now, where do these F files go? These FMAP go?
Certainly in the weather maps folder, weather maps updates rather folder, you'll see that now we have these series of FMAP files, right? One for each of the times that you specified in that dialogue where it was talking about. When do you want to save from and to? There is an important caveat here that we need to mention, which is that right now VMT does not clear out any of the existing weather.
Okay.
And this can lead to an unfortunate situation where you've saved a bunch of weather, say from 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock, and then you make a bunch of new weather from say 9 o'clock to 12 o'clock. And if you do something like save it in 10-minute increments in the first time and 15-minute increments the second time, because the old files are still there and all BMS knows is what's in this directory, you can get some weird toggling back and forth. So it really is a best.
So you're meshing old files in with new files.
You got it exactly right. Okay. So it's a good practice, and it's something that I will add to VMT someday. Before you hit that save weather files button, to go in and clear out this folder because
Oh,
you
okay.
don't want the old weather.
Okay, so I could just delete these all out and it won't affect anything that's already in place.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and VMT is smart about knowing which folder it should go in because like if you're like it knows which theater you're in. So if you're using Balkans, it'll save it in the right place. If you're using Korea, it'll save it in the right place based on the mission you have open.
Right. They have different campaign folders. Okay.
They have different campaign folders. You got it right. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm in my Windows Explorer. I'm just deleting out all the other files except for the ones we just created today, and it looked like it created about 25 files already. So
Sounds
that's
right.
one every 15 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Good.
All right, so we've covered sort of the very basic usage, which is, hit the random buttons until you see something you like and then save. Maybe adjust the time. But I know one of the things that you were interested in was how do I get more control over the weather? Is that something you'd like to talk about next, or did you want to jump to something else?
Yeah, so I was thinking, let's say I wanted to have a global weather the whole way around. So, because right now we have bad weather here, but good weather there. But let's say I want bad weather, I want it where we have to be over top of the clouds for a GPS strike mission from 20 some thousand feet. So I want to take off, climb up a few thousand, hit the clouds, climb through it, and then be over the top. So, but have that the whole way around. Is there a large area, at least the mission area?
Yep. So there's a feature in VMT. It's in this same weather tab. If you scroll down, you'll see on the right-hand side there, you'll see that there's a thing called weather overrides. So weather override regions.
Yeah.
So go ahead and add a new one.
Okay.
Click the add new button. And so you're going to get a circle. Weather override regions are always a circle. You can click and drag that circle and put it wherever you want. And I'll explain in a moment what it actually is. What this is saying is, okay, look, we have via the virtue of picking that seed, a world that has certain weather in it, right? And we've clicked the random button until we saw one we like. But let's say there's a part of the world that we would like to override that weather in. Well, you can do that with a weather override region. It's exactly what it's meant to do. And the way it works is getting a little deeper into the way VMT works. Everything is driven off of pressure. So what VMT really generates is not like a weather pattern, but it actually generates an air pressure pattern.
Right.
And then it uses that to derive what the areas of inclement weather should be, what the areas of sunny weather should be, so forth and so on. And so by influencing areas of low or high pressure, which is what these weather override regions do, you can make it more likely, or you can control completely even, whether there will be poor or sunny weather in a particular region.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
That region will be all the same. It'll be the same weather. Like it'll be the same pressure through the whole region?
Well, not quite. So let's go through this carefully. It is variable. It's actually somewhat subtle. So what we're looking at here is we've got this sort of pink dashed line, and it has these handles, and you can drag those, and you can grab those and drag them bigger. And then it has this sort of inner ring that's the same thing. And so what's happening here is that the inner ring, the one that you're dragging right now, is an area where the pressure will in fact be exactly what you set there. So if you'll notice on the right side
over
there,
here.
29. And we know if we look higher up,
right,
that's low pressure, and it corresponds to inclement weather.
Right.
And then in the region between the inner and the outer rings, it will sort of slowly fade from 29 to whatever it would be at the outside edge. Okay? Does that make sense?
Got it.
So like if it's sitting in the middle of a sunny area, it will slowly fade from 29, which is inclement, to sunny in the outer region. Now in this case, we've got variable weather all around the edge, so it's going to fade kind of in a complicated way from the inclement area weather at the middle to sunny in some places, poor in others, fair in others.
Right.
Right. So it sort of blends it in. The other thing you can do here is there's a strength parameter there. It's currently set to 1. That's a number between, and just like everything else, you can click on that to get it. Yeah, exactly right. But that's a number between 0 and 1. So what you could do is you could say 0.5 there. And what it would say is now instead of saying that the pressure in the center, in that inner ring, is exactly 29, it's going to be halfway between 29 and whatever it would otherwise be.
So it tailored it, feathered it down, smoothed
feathers
it out a little.
Exactly. Well, it always feathers it in the sort of the intermediary ring.
Oh, okay.
What we're saying is that in the middle, instead of controlling it completely, it just sort of influences 50% towards 29 from whatever it would otherwise be.
I see. Now, if I want to make the middle better, because if I think that's too incremental, then I just bump this pressure up, right?
Yeah. And if you scroll up a little bit, would not normally change these too much. And frankly, this is another place where I need to adjust. But if you scroll up a little bit, if you want to know what numbers to pick there, right there in the weather type configuration section,
up in here?
you can see what the thresholds are for sunny, fair, poor, inclement in that from and to, those first two columns.
Okay.
So your inclement weather in these settings is going to go from 29 to 29.4. Your poor is from 29.4 to 29.85, et cetera, et cetera.
So the low end of the poor, I could be 29.40, 29.45, and I'm poor, but I'm on the lower end of it. Okay.
Yeah.
But if I want to get up to where it's fair the whole way through, I need to get up to 29.85. So I put in 29.80. It's almost fair in there. So if I want to, will it tailor it if I come down somewhere in between there? So somewhere in between these two, I make it 29.60. Is that set kind of in between then?
Yeah, so it'll in the very center ring, it'll be halfway between, because you have your strength at 0.5,
okay,
29.60, and whatever it would otherwise have been. And then it'll blend into the surrounding weather in the intermediary ring.
Okay.
Typically what you see people do is they would set the strength to 1, meaning, no, I want to dictate exactly what the weather is. And then you would pick a pressure that corresponds to exactly the weather that you want. So maybe you want like 31 for extremely good weather. This is another area, by the way, where VMT needs to improve. This whole notion that inclement weather is exactly 29 to 29.40 is kind of ridiculous. It leads to extremely wide pressure variations throughout the theater. And it's something that I need to fix someday. But for the moment, that's how VMT works.
Okay. So I've got 29.60. That lands it right in the poor range.
Yeah.
So we've got poor weather.
Yeah.
But it's feathering itself into being nicer weather because it's trying to adapt itself to the outer ring of the circle. But how do I make the entire mission poor?
Well, just drag that inner circle until it's bigger.
Okay.
Right. And now you're saying this is the region of 100% influence. Right. You can say the things that you're doing, you're dragging right now, you can set in there as well. You could say radius instead of saying 13. You could say, 100 or something. You could make that circle very, very big.
Okay.
That the units there, by the way, are weather grids. So weather in BMS is defined in roughly 9 mile by 9 mile squares. And that's what that unit is, if that makes any sense.
So the fall off is the inner circle.
Inner circle, exactly.
And then this bigger. So I made this pretty much. I'm looking at global South Korea weather here.
Yep.
Inside the outer ring, but the inner ring where my mission is now, I've set it to poor.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and you could see through it. I can make it brighter if you want, but it does look like the whole region is the same weather there. So now that would be the same altimeter reading and everything the whole way through.
Yes. In the inner ring, the altimeter will be exactly 29.6 as you move outside of that. And you could set your strength to like 0.9 if you wanted to have some minor variation, right?
Okay.
Like that's because that'll blend it with the underlying weather model. And actually, if you want to know what the weather is, you can click in a square.
Okay.
And so you can see right now there's that sort of gray square that's highlighted right there. The little gray square shows up in the forecast section, which if you scroll to, I believe it's higher in this module or this section rather. Yep. So it's telling you the weather at that location, and you can see the actual pressure, the actual temperature, the wind, the visibility, the precipitation, the cloud, all that good stuff.
At this particular time, at this weather time.
At that time, and that location, the one that's highlighted. Yeah.
Yep. So it looks like I'm on a fair area here.
Yes. Well, poor actually, but yes.
Oh, am I poor? Oh,
yeah.
That is poor. That's yellow.
Poor.
So there's a red one here. It's incremental. Okay.
Yep.
But it'll say that at 10 o'clock it's going to turn to poor. 11 o'clock it'll turn.
Yes.
After that.
There is actually some uncertainty built into that forecast. Like that's a forecast that you can share with if you're a mission designer, you can share that with your pilots.
Sure.
And it will not actually be 100% accurate.
Oh, just like real weather.
Yeah.
Okay. So I can't click inside the circle area, but I can see how it works by clicking out.
That's a bug.
Oh,
But what you can do is if you click on that forecast for where it says location 547, that's a drop down, and you
yes.
can type in Kunsan,
Oh, okay.
and it'll give you the Kunsan location if you do that.
Oh, you actually just type in. Oh, I see. You scroll and look for
Yeah,
Kunsan.
scroll to Kunsan.
Ah, very handy. So there, we
Yeah.
got
So
Kunsan
there
Air
you got
Base.
your
Oh,
forecast
and
for
there's the
Kunsan,
grid.
and you can see it's
And
going to
it's
be
poor.
poor.
Yep.
Now, this actually is a good segue to the next thing you might want to do, which is that those weather override regions that we're looking at, that this pink thing that you've just done,
Right.
actually can be time based. So if you scroll back down to where where you were controlling that,
Okay.
and click fade in out.
Fade in and out. Oh, extra option.
Yeah. So now what this says is this is a weather override region that will take effect beginning at 0900.
Okay.
It will reach full strength. In other words, it will be as you specify, 90% between the 29.6 and the actual weather at 10 o'clock.
Okay.
It will stay that way until 12 o'clock, and then it will begin to fade away until 1300 hours.
Okay.
And you can see this most easily, I think, by advancing the time. If you scroll up to the time controls at the top and just sort of step forward.
So we're watching it fade away at about 1 o'clock or so. 1, 2.
Yeah, exactly.
Step forward here.
Yeah, just click that a few times, and you'll see it. So there's your 10 o'clock. And now it's at it's fading out, right? So
right. So the bad weather moved down out of the way. Yep.
Or more to the point, the bad weather underlying maybe moved out of the way, but let's step back to 9 o'clock. Yeah, like that. Just step back to 0900, and then change your step interval to say 15 minutes, so we can see a little bit more fine grained changes. So then step forward, and what you'll see is that the poor weather that you defined sort of fades in.
Oh, I see. It's fading away as this other weather come in.
Correct.
So if my mission started at 9, ran into 10, it's going to have the bad weather fading away around 10 o'clock into this good weather.
Yeah, okay. However you've configured it. Now, so what you might do, and in fact something that Zeus is especially good at, is he'll define a weather override that ensures good weather for takeoff and ensures poor weather for recovery, because that's sort of the interesting case, right?
Yes, that was going to be in my next question. So we can make a bad weather area over here outside the mission and then have it
well, you could put them on top of each other. Actually, you could have two, one on top of the other, but change the fade times such that one is in effect at the mission start and one is in effect at the mission end. Okay. And they will sort of cross fade from one to the other, if that makes sense.
Okay. So I've got one created here. How do you do the second one?
Well, there's an add new button at the bottom of the weather override regions there.
Well, let's put it into work. Let's start out. Let's see. We got pretty good weather here at 9 o'clock. So mission time's probably an hour and a half. So let's say at 10 o'clock, let's start having it fade away.
Okay. Yeah. So you want to change your fade out times down in that pink outline box. Right now you've got it peaking at 10 o'clock, but you really want to have it sort of probably peak at 09:30 maybe and taper at 10 o'clock or something like that.
Okay, so 9:30 to peak and then taper out.
Starting at 10. Yep. And then be completely tapered out by 10:30. 10:30. Yeah. Okay, so there you go. Now you've got your sort of poor weather from 0900 to 10:30. Okay. And then you can click Add New down at the bottom of that pink rectangle. And now you've got a second weather override region that can have entirely different settings. And
okay, I think we actually changed. Did we change the first override to nice weather?
Well, you can see it's yellow, so it's poor.
Oh, it is yellow underneath there. Okay. Yeah. So we would need to bump this up to probably like, I don't know, a 30-40 or something.
30-40 sounds pretty good to me.
So if we set that to a 30-40, now we've got nice weather, almost clear. Oh, it's green, but it's almost clear weather here. And then now where would I put the bad weather and have it come in?
You probably put it in the same location, but you just changed the timing. Okay. The other thing I want to mention too is right now there's that little 4-way arrow button in those pink areas. You can click that button on the right hand side of the screen, and your weather overrides. Yeah. That's depressed right now, meaning that the go ahead and click it. It's fine. It won't hurt anything. Either one. So the point is that it will show
I see.
the
You can
edit
turn it off.
controls or not, and you can turn it off. And that's what that show outline box does, by the way, is the
Okay.
is it whether you
I
want to
want to see
see
the
it or not.
outline. All right.
Yeah,
So it's kind of locked here. My first weather area is locked. I won't be messing with it.
right,
But now
exactly.
I can bring this other weather area over the top here.
Yeah,
Make it about as maybe even bigger. Make sure
yeah,
it definitely covers the area.
yeah. You get the idea.
Okay. So we got this area here, and I'm going to turn this other one off so it doesn't interfere me.
Hmm.
And this is going to be my bad weather. Probably not that bad.
That's pretty bad.
That's pretty bad. I think we were going with something just over 40, so 29.45. So it's poor. It's not bad, but it's poor.
Mhm.
Now it's back to yellow. Yep, made it yellow. And this one I need to add fade in times here also, right?
Correct.
Okay. 10. So we want it to begin around. Oh, it actually automatically picked up off of this.
It's
So
picking up the current
it'll
time.
peak
So
at
like when you
10:30
add
when
it,
it ends. Very
when
nice.
you add a new one, it's picking up the current time, which you can see above the map. There's
Oh, we did go forwards. Okay.
yep.
But that's probably pretty good. This one, it's okay to have this one start at 9:30, overlapping this one.
Yes, and if you have multiple, they will crossfade. They all combine,
Okay.
right? So you know what I mean? Like it'll blend and
Right.
do something reasonably sensible.
Alrighty. So I could actually probably push this out to even 10 o'clock just to make sure my good weather is there on takeoff at
Yep.
9 o'clock. So this bad weather won't start at all until 10.
Yep.
Alrighty.
And it will
then
only
it'll,
begin to fade in at 10. So you know you'll
yeah.
get, like I say, a cross. And in fact, the other weather override is in effect until 10:30. So you know what I mean? Like you're getting sort of some overlap, but that's okay.
Right. Sure. That sounds good. Okay.
Yep. Oh, I should mention one more thing there. There's that little box at the bottom that says exclude from forecast.
Yes.
That's a way that you can mess with your pilots because when you distribute a VMTB, so we haven't talked about this, but there's a save briefing button in here somewhere. They get the weather, and you can say, well, I don't want the weather override regions to be included in the forecast. In other words, I want it to be a surprise.
Right. Exactly. So we've completely changed. Our first thing that we did was a random thing, and then we saved that. So I've gone now, you've shown me two different scenarios where I can have a stable, steady region
Yeah.
over the whole flight, the whole mission. But we also did another one, this last one we did, where take off where it's nice, land where it's bad. So this one, I'm like, I like this one. Let's keep it. I want to save it. Do I have to
Yep.
go back in and remove those F maps?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, like I said, at some point VMT will say, hey, you've got existing weather. Would you like me to remove that for you? It does not currently do that.
Okay. Well, I'm going to go into my Explorer real quick. I mean, it's simple to get to. You just go in and hit delete, and it's all gone.
Yep.
Now, what if I have? So I create depth maps for this mission, and I want to keep them for this mission. How do I? And then let's say I do 5 or 6 other missions over the next month, and
Yep.
I keep deleting out F maps. Do I need to save these somewhere and say these are the F maps for this mission?
There's only one weather for a given theater, right? Like there's not a thing that says this weather pattern over time is for this mission.
Right.
This weather pattern over time is for this mission. No, you have the weather in the Korea theater at 9 o'clock, period, end of story. That's all you get.
Right.
So the way that we kind of work with that is there's a button above where you are right now that says save weather settings. And what that saves is a file. It's not a BMS file. This is a VMT file.
Okay.
You can click that, and it will save all your weather overrides, your random seed that you picked, any other weather settings that you've made. So you can then load those again using the button right next to it later and say, well, I'm going to start from there. You know.
Okay. So that's if I'm going to hit save weather settings right now. It's just giving me a pop-up prompt to save it somewhere. I can even put it on the desktop, I guess.
Yep.
Or do I have to put it?
Yep.
Okay, so I could put it in a mission folder. So this
Anywhere you
is
want.
called FNPU Strike W. So I save it, put it in with it, and it's always there. Now, when I come back to run this mission again, just clean out my F maps from before, and then load this in, and I've got it, and then hit save weather files up here.
Yeah, tweak and save. Yep, exactly.
Okay. All right, sounds good.
Yeah, totally. And the VMTW extension there indicates that it is a VMT weather file. So it's not a BMS thing. It's about working in VMT.
Got it. All right.
There's
So I
one
could,
more thing we should probably talk about, but I'm
sure.
happy to answer more questions. But there is one more thing because I know you wanted to talk about wind, and I want to point out that
Okay.
nothing that we did yet will influence the wind.
Okay.
But it sounded like maybe you had a question first.
Is the No, I was going to say that's probably we'll get rolling into it so we don't get too long-winded on it. I think we get a pretty good overview. Wind and stabilization area around a tanker so that you don't have
Yes.
jostling winds that are
Right.
just impossible to refuel on a tanker.
There's an
Sure.
overlay button in display options, kind of right where your mouse is, right there, down a little bit
Okay.
from where you are. Yep. And
All
click
right.
overlay, not the display
Oh, this
rather,
one.
but the
Okay.
overlay.
Overlay
Say
winds.
wind. Yep.
Okay.
So now we're seeing the wind. And so this uses a notation that apparently is standard, where these little sort of hockey sticks point in the direction of the wind,
Right.
and the number of tails on them tell you the strength.
Speed.
Yeah, and actually, if you click somewhere, Map Legend, up in the upper left-hand corner, it's been a while since I worked on this, very upper, like above the
Okay.
map,
Uh-huh.
you'll see there's a little indication there of what those mean.
Right.
They're very easy to interpret, like a long is 10, a short is 5,
Right.
so 3 longs is 30, and it shows the direction and everything.
And this is showing two longs and a short, so 25 knots. Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
Uh-huh.
So this lets us visualize the wind, and the wind strength is influenced by your weather type. So like as we overrode the weather to be worse in your weather override, we were also making the wind stronger because the way we have this set up, poor weather has stronger wind than say fair weather, however I have it set up. And there are settings in here for all that, but the thing you'll notice is that it doesn't influence at all the direction. Yeah, and if you wanted to step through it at some point, you could verify that that it's evolving the way that you want to. Go back to the mission time and step, and go, yeah, that looks good at 9, looks good at 9:30, looks good at 10. But again, you'll notice that those wind directions they're evolving over time, but they're not really uniform. And one of the things that is a known issue in BMS, maybe they'll fix it someday. I'm sure they will. In fact, is that tankers don't do very well when the wind varies.
Right.
Like tankers are tricky as it is. So if you're going to have refueling, you're going to want to say, well, the wind in this area is completely stable. Now, someday I would like it to be the case that weather override concept includes wind. Like you want to say, this is a region where I want to control pressure, and I want to control temperature, and I want to control wind, and I want to control this and that. But VMT is a hobby project, and I kind of built it up. And the feature that actually came before weather override regions is something called wind stability regions. So if we go over to the right-hand side and scroll down to roughly where you have that weather override region, you'll see that there's a wind stability region.
Right.
You can click Add New and make a new wind stability region. Okay. So one of the weird things is it's on the map, but you're probably not seeing because you're scrolled out. So you need to zoom out, and then you'll see up in the right.
There it is. That's
Same
why I didn't
thing.
see people were okay.
Yep. Click and drag it to wherever you want it.
Okay.
And you can resize it with the little handles.
All right. Let me turn this thing down a little bit. Get this. There we go.
Yeah.
So in the real world, the tanker finds the nice weather and the nice winds, or climbs to an altitude where they can refuel. But when we put our tankers in here, they're kind of preset in whatever the world is.
Correct.
We just drag this around the tanker,
yes,
and now we'll have stable refueling.
And this is a place where you probably want to go into your flights tab and display the tanker track.
Right.
So you can see where it is, and then you can just kind of drag it to be.
Okay. So
there's your tanker. So make sure you put it on it.
So
now, one of the things here is that, like I said, the wind stability region. So you dragged it, and the wind all went to the same strength and direction.
Oh yeah. Yep.
So one of the big tenets of VMT is that when you do something, you should see its effect right away. I've tried to make that be the case. In any event, so one of the things about wind stability regions, because it is an older feature, it doesn't have the same time controls that you have with the weather overrides. So you can't make them fade in and fade out. Someday I'll unify those two things, and you'll be able to control the onset and outset of those wind stability regions the same way as you can for the weather override regions, but it's not the case right now.
But for now, it's fixed for all time.
For all time, correct.
Okay, so I kind of want to have my tanker track maybe outside of my mission track, so my mission weather and winds can have its own, and then I'll just build the tanker stabilization zone off to the side a little bit where it doesn't quite affect it.
Yeah, although the thing to realize here is that for that tanker track, you see the two triangles. That's its
Right.
on-station area. You really only need to stabilize the wind around those, so you can make
Sure.
it pretty small.
So I can make it down here. I got to leave some room, I guess, when it makes its turn in case it's over top of one of those.
Yeah, it might be a little bit
So,
outside the area. Those squares are
okay.
nine nautical miles, so they're not super big, but
All
you
right.
can, one or
There
two
we go.
padding should be plenty.
Oh, good. Yep.
And you will see wind discontinuities at the edges. So there's nothing in VMT that would say, well, you're about to go from an area with 25 knot winds out of the northwest to an area with 5 knot winds out of the northeast. It'll just switch.
It'll just bump. So like
Yep.
here, we got a 30 knot wind going into a 5 knot wind.
Yep.
So you'll feel it. And I've felt those bumps before,
Yep.
even
Yep.
without putting it into a tool. Okay.
Yep. Yep. I mean, BMS is actually pretty good. They do a lot of smoothing of the weather. One of the things that you might find is if you try to make really, really small areas of inclement weather and you go fly in it, like BMS will be like, "Nuh-uh, you can't have sunny weather over the Kunsan Air Base and inclement weather over Kunsan City, that are like 3 miles
Okay.
apart.
Right.
It'll blend them together, and you just won't get the effect that you want. So you have to kind of keep that in mind as you
No,
do
that's good
this.
programming. At least kind
Yeah,
of so you don't just smack into a straight wall that shows up.
exactly,
So
exactly.
it looks to me like the wind stability region does have settings here with
Yes,
speed and heading. So
yes,
I can
correct.
actually, okay. So if I want to take off to the north, I can put a heading in here if I wanted to.
Yeah, or whatever you want, and that's another reason to use these. In fact, the two main uses that we see for this are one is tanker, and the other one's carrier, because a lot of times, because the carrier currently in BMS is a newer feature, and so it doesn't, you know, always turn into the wind the way you'd expect from a
Oh yeah,
full fidelity simulation. So
handy.
we
Okay.
see people, we have seen people who want to operate off the carrier use the wind stability regions to ensure that the heading is correct for where the carrier will be at takeoff and landing.
Right, right. And that's a great reason to have a tool like this, is so you can use the tool to help adapt to make it more realistic that you can't do in the sim itself.
Yeah, and I should point out, by the way, that there is another tool that we haven't talked about called Weather Commander, which is a really good tool. If what you want is one weather pattern over the whole theater, and it can even have different regions of like inclement weather and poor weather and everything, but that doesn't change. I would happily use Weather Commander for all my missions if I didn't want weather that was going to evolve over time, and have some of the unpredictability that a tool that generates weather can give you.
Right.
But if people are looking for look, I just want inclement weather everywhere, or I want one patch of inclement weather, I don't care about it changing over time, they should definitely look at Weather Commander.
Okay. Alrighty. So, but I like the little bit of a moving pattern of this if you want to hit it, set it variable. But if I wanted to make sure I had a nice, smooth, stable flight the whole way, I could really drag this stabilization zone the whole way around my
Yeah,
mission and have stable winds the whole way,
yeah, or the whole theater.
or the whole theater.
Yeah,
Okay, very
absolutely.
good. Yeah, yeah, and as well as drag my weather regions larger
Yep.
also. Okay, very good. So I could get to that, but it's still going to have some movement and flow in it.
Yeah, well, it's up to you, but it certainly
Right.
can.
Okay, good. On the scenario I had where we're taking off and we want to climb up, hit the clouds at 5,000 feet, how would I adjust it to make sure I don't have anything between 0 and 5,000? But then when I hit 5,000, from there up to 20,000 is clouds. Is that done in the settings
Yes,
here?
that's exactly right. So you need to know the weather type, which you do know because you've
So we
controlled it with your weather override regions. So for you, it would be poor weather,
say it's poor.
right? So you would say, well, I want there to be, so stratus are your solid clouds. So you would set your stratus base at 5,000 and your
Okay.
stratus top at 20,000. And then you can put cumulus wherever you want. Typically, cumulus is going to be below the stratus. So you might have like your cumulus base be like 3,000. So you'd have broken clouds at 3,000, up a ways, and then you'd hit your solid overcast at 5,000 up to 20.
Okay. How far up do these cumulus go? Will they actually overlap?
They're the poofies, so
Right.
they have a fixed height of something like, I forget, 2,000, 3,000 feet, something like
Okay.
that. But you'll know it when you see it.
All right. So there's usually only just one level of cumulus that you go through. You can't make it wider. You can't make it like a 10,000 feet worth of cumulus.
Correct. The
Okay,
BMS model is exactly what you see here. You can
right.
control visibility, the
So it's just doing
stratus
base
space,
only.
yeah, it's all
Okay.
that. It's exactly that.
Okay. So if I didn't want, what if I didn't want any of these?
Uh, you would probably, I
Would
don't
it just,
actually don't know. That's a good question. I'm
okay.
not sure off the top of my head. I mean, I think that the thing is like the way the weather model works is you always have cumulus clouds except in sunny weather. So you'll notice that in
Okay.
the sunny weather it has cumulus base of
Right.
0.
It's
That's
shadowed
what
out. Right.
sunny means.
Yep.
Sunny means no clouds.
Okay. So I actually put it at 4,500 feet for the cumulus. So that would be like 500 feet of puffy
Yeah.
clouds, and then
You
boom,
can
you're right into the poor
you can
weather.
put it inside too. The two things that cumulus controls are one is the visible clouds, and if you're in the solid, if you're in the soup at 5,000 feet, if you put that like at 5,500 feet,
Uh-huh.
you'd never see them.
Right.
But what it
Okay.
also controls is turbulence. The
Oh.
cumulus layer is also a turbulence layer.
Ah.
So
Okay.
if you're like, well, I want to have turbulence at 10,000, if you want to be really evil, put the turbulence at Angels 22, and have fun trying to tank.
Right.
We've done that. That's a trick and a half. If you think you're like, man, I finally mastered refueling, well, put some good old cumulus clouds at 22K and have a ball. The weather model in
It
BMS
is.
is really sophisticated. I mean, there's clearly places where it could be better, but at the same time, they're working in the limitations of being able to run on all these PCs that people have of various capabilities. And I think they've done an amazing job. With something that is relatively constrained, but at the same time allows for a ton of sophistication. I would encourage people to just forget about the weather override stuff we've done. Just go in and hit the randomize clouds button and save the weather. That's it. If you
Okay.
just do that,
Okay.
I think what you will discover is that BMS is capable of an astonishing variety of visual and meteorological conditions. I mean, this is something that we found. We went from it's sunny, it's winds 180, 04 knots to whoa, I can barely see to wow, there's this weird sort of bluish light to it's really you really get I mean that randomize button that I put in for the cloud cover, the cloud configuration
Right.
is like the coolest thing. Like you hit that button and like all of a sudden there's 1,000 different types of
Variables.
atmospheric conditions. It's
Yeah.
super cool.
So you could run a TE one time and then go in here,
Yeah.
hit that button. Now you still go in and save the weather files. You save the F maps, right?
Yes, you would. Yes,
Okay.
there's some subtleties there around the clouds are actually kept in a TWX file,
Uh-huh.
which is actually mission specific. So it's a little bit, the manual actually covers this. If you want more details, I won't try to cover it here, but yes, if you did
But
that, it would be safe.
it's a matter. I can run my TE one week and have a certain weather on it, and then the next
Yeah,
day change that TE around by
yeah,
going in and hitting random weather, hitting
yeah.
save weather files, and now I got a whole new.
Oh
It's
yeah,
almost like a whole new mission because it's
oh
all
yeah.
different weather, especially if you go
And
from nice weather to bad weather.
oh no, actually, the big difference is visibility. If you go from
Visibility,
30-mile visibility to 7-mile visibility,
big deal.
well, good luck using the TGP.
Oh yeah, exactly. It does. It'll change a strike mission if you're
Yep.
planning on a TGP strike. Absolutely. Couple other things I know I did like just that we could throw them in here on the video. That I used to do it by hand in a Word document is take a picture and paste it and then draw pictures and lines and everything. But I think it's in the annotation section, is it?
That's correct. Yep.
Yep. And I'm not sure if you have any of this on any of the videos, but
I do.
you can add shapes. So you can add, and I'm not fast with it, but you can add different rectangles, ovals, and I think you could
Yep.
drag them open and big. So you can say, this is a hostile area. Trying to think if I could
Yeah.
drag the
You
whole
just
thing
click.
here.
You can
Just
just you
looking at
can.
the
It's a
handle.
little.
Yep.
That's it.
So there you
Exactly.
go. There's a hot area. You could put make it in SAM thread areas, route areas. Put boxes in so you can box off a grid for the AWACS or any other areas that you want. And then there's you can add arrows. There's different arrows in here, arrows and lines, and as well as you do have the PPTs in here, so you can put
Yep.
into threats, and you've got them already added in here. So you got all the surface to air threats. We
Yep.
pick one, drop it in, there it is, and then you
It's read
just
from the ppt.ini, so the whatever
right.
you've got in there will be available.
Yeah, I've got a bunch of stuff dropped in on just to show real quick. But that stuff's so handy. And then when I'm done with that, where's it at? I can make a picture.
Map, I think. Yep.
Right here. There we go. So I can save the map image, whatever I just drew on there. I can hit save image. Now I got a JPEG image or a PNG image. I can post up to a forums post. I can send it out to people prior to mission, and that along with on the mission itself, I can put in notes here, the briefing notes that are in here. Save this as a briefing, which
The button's right
is
there, actually right above the
right
notes where we are.
here.
Yep. Yep.
Saves as a VMTB briefing, so I can send the VMTB. I can send a picture, and anybody else has this tool. Well, they can see the picture straight in their computer, but anybody has this tool can load this in and see what I've just loaded up, and you get all the weather and everything, and all the flights and all the routes and everything. So, very handy tool overall.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I made it is because, like I said, I ran like 3 campaigns. I ran, I don't know. It probably was about 200 missions by the time I did it in over the course of, let's say, a year and a half. And I got really tired of doing these things, like by typing it into a forum and screenshotting. Typical developer, right? I'll spend 1,000 hours automating a task that would have taken me 100 hours by hand. But it was fun, and hopefully people find it useful.
It sounds weird, but the more I use this, the more I use it, because it's a learning curve with anything,
Yeah.
but it's pretty intuitive. It's a pretty easy tool to use. But what it can do when you get into mission creation and you want to have something to help you out with it, it definitely has been helping me more and more as I grow in my mission creating. I grow in the use of this tool, so it's pretty handy. Well, thank you very much for all your time on this, going over it. Not only helped me personally with my missions, but hopefully we'll post this video up on our YouTube channel, and hopefully somebody will get something out of it, and pat on the back if they made it through a whole hour of all of this and are still interested.
Right. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, but it's more fun to get in and play with it, start using it, and actually get into the pit and then in the world and see that weather you've created and things moving around with you. So
Yeah, and I appreciate you asking questions, and because I've made the tutorial videos, but I think I wrote it, so like I don't know where the stumbling blocks are. So having a chance to explain it to you, I think will really help people as well.
yeah, I think it was a good idea. Well, thank you a lot for your time.